Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Rob Love. I'm the president and owner of Love and Company. And I think we've got a really interesting topic to share today. It's very different from other ones that we've had in the past. Oftentimes we talk about expansion and growing. Other times we talk about if your census is really low, things to look at and do to build it back up. But today is really kind of a different idea altogether from anything we've done. And that's you might be at budget and your budget might be healthy financially for the community, but maybe there's still an opportunity to capture even more revenue and use that to fund improvements to the community or further growth. So we'll walk through how we get through all that in just as we go through the webinar today. But quick logistics point first. We do welcome questions. Well, I shouldn't say that way. You are welcome to add questions at any time during the presentation. However, we will hold the questions and address them at the end. It's part of how we try and make sure we keep this in the designated time frame for today. But if you think of something, please go ahead and pop it in. It's in the Q&A box in your control panel for Zoom. For me this morning, I had to click the little more icon in the control panel and saw it there, but you can open it and send questions to us at any point. One of the first questions we usually get is, will I be able to get a copy of this presentation? We go one better than that all the time in that we are recording this today, and we will post the recording on our website in a few days. Everybody who's either here today or registered and didn't come, you'll all get a link to the recording sent out after it's done. So if you see things here today that you would like to share with others in your organization, please do. That's what we're trying to do, is help everybody. All right. So with that as a little bit of a backdrop, I'd like to welcome our participants in the panel this morning. We'll work left to right. Amy, how about if you lead us off? And for each of you, I'd like to, in addition to just introducing yourselves, maybe share a thought on why this topic is important to you. Amy.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Amy Brody, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Client Experience at Love & Company. I work across all of our clients using what I've learned from different situations over the years to align strategy and bring tailored approaches to communities, whether helping an occupancy challenge community or brand new blue sky project and anywhere in between. Geez, a curveball right up front, Rob. This conversation matters to me because I often see small gaps in alignments that lead to a missed opportunity, and how getting to functionally full can truly change a community's performance.
Great. Thank you. James.
Greetings, everyone. This is James Larson. I'm Managing Director at Forvis Mazars. Forvis Mazars is an accounting a traditional accounting, tax, and audit firm, but I get to have the pleasure of working on our consulting practice with retirement communities across the country as they are looking to expand, renovate, reposition, or even build new. Our work is often focused in the feasibility study side, but we do also complete financial planning, market research work, and all kinds of information. Rob, I'm so excited as we've been getting ready for this because at the end of the day, I am a CPA, financial person, and the best thing we can do for our clients is find ways to get more money, to get more cash, and really consider how they improve performance. And even small changes are meaningful.
Great, thank you. And Dan.
Thanks, Rob. Dan Godfrey from RLPS Architects. I'm an architect and partner at RLPS, where we strive to inspire people and transform lives. And we do that by kind of traveling the country, working with life plan communities, oftentimes not-for-profit, mission-based companies. So revenue is always part of the equation when you're talking about new design projects. And I think too often folks don't dig a little deeper and think about their current operations and where there might be revenue that isn't part of the project, but might position them for a sustainable future.
Great, thank you. And I'd especially like to thank both Dan and James for being our guests here today, non-Love & Company people. and all the time that they've put in to help prepare and share the thoughts with you all today. So thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
Your commitment.
Yes, thank you.
So again, today's conversation is a little different than a lot that we do. We hear everywhere there's tremendous opportunity for growing. We should be looking at expansions. We should be looking at new communities. We need to find funding for that. And it just may be that many of our organizations may have a lot of the funding that they need to undertake new initiative stashed away in empty residences in their existing community. We're going to talk about what the idea of functionally full means and what it may take to get there, and knowing that you're always going to have some level of turnover. But all the ideas about growth that we hear, I thought it was interesting that as we were planning this webinar, an article came out in McKnight's, and I'm just going to go ahead and read this, maybe add a little color commentary. The overarching story of senior living for 2026 is one of alignment, according to a new report from IRR Research. Demographics, slowed construction, and improving operations are converging to create potentially one of the most favorable long-term supply and demand imbalances the industry has seen, the report states. Occupancy is on the rise, and the pipeline of new construction is limited. As the first of the baby boomers turn 80 this year, demographic momentum is driving operating improvement across stabilized communities. And that last half of the last sentence, that's what we're focused on here today. Demographic momentum being the engine that we can use to drive operating improvement across communities that already think we're at a stabilized perspective. So a few more details. A lot of this I know you've already seen. First is the traditional demand growth, and we're just at the left edge of the red bars, the beginning of the greatest growth period that we will ever see in our lives in senior living. So that's a lot of the demand growth that's out there. And the population, we've seen from many studies, they are affluent enough to be able to afford our product. Next, Nick reports regularly on a lot of census trends. And what we see is that the average, they still call it CCRC. Lisa McCracken, if you ever hear this, maybe one day we can get it to be called life plan communities, but they show the average census of all communities at about 93%. And that's a lot of what we're going to focus on, that gap between 93 and what we're going to define as functionally full, which is 97. More elaboration. This graph just shows what's happening with development of new residences versus people moving in to residences. And what you can clearly see over the last 4 years, the bluish teal bars are construction and opening of new residences. And you can see how steadily and how low that has dropped these past several years. While the orange bars represents absorption, people moving in to our communities. And you can see how that far outpaces the supply of available inventory. That's probably the best illustration of the opportunity that we have today. So, Amy, I've mentioned the term functionally full a couple of times here. Could you walk our audience through just what does that mean to be functionally full, and how did we arrive at that?
Sure. As opposed to dysfunctionally full. Functionally full is equal to 97%. So this means that 97% of residents are generating revenue. It's not just occupied and sold targets, it's occupied and paying. So why 97%? Actuarially, the typical time that a resident spends in IL is about 8 years. This means the average community has about 12% turnover per year, which is 12 out of every 100 residents. For most communities, it should take no more than about 3 months to prepare residents for the next resident and get them moved in, which means that at any given point in time, a community has 3 out of every 100 residents being prepared for the next residents. So 90% of the IL residences are occupied and paying.
Great, thank you. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So the key thing that we're here to explore today is, so if you're at 93 instead of functionally full at 97, is it worth the effort to get there? So let's go next. James, could you walk through with us, what is that revenue gap
Right.
between if you're 93 versus 97?
That's right. Yeah, and so the concept here is, of course, focused on occupancy. It is this longer term impact, but let's just go through a scenario here. Let's say you've got a traditional community of 250 independent living units, 93% occupancy. So got about that's essentially 4% gap in the census to go from 93 to the functionally full 97. With that math, it's 10 residences. For this example, let's use $250,000 as our entrance fee. Let's just say that's a traditional entrance fee or average, and our average monthly fee is $4,000. So this is purely a math exercise. If you have 10 more units with those additional entrance fees, you could generate up to $2.5 million. You also have your monthly service fees, so that ongoing activity every year of collecting additional monthly fees. Cumulatively over the period here, we've got about almost $4 million of revenue or cash coming in. So in combined, it's a pretty big number, $6 million for this scenario of both just going from 93 to 97 with the traditional type of units and pricing. Rob, as we were talking,
I'm sorry, just for fun, I was going to say, for those of you who've joined us today, for whom, $6 million is chump change, it's not important, doesn't mean much, you can go ahead and sign off now. But for those of you who think that would be kind of nice for us to have, stay tuned. Sorry, James, go ahead.
That's right. No, it's $6 million. It's a lot. We use in that first example the idea of a traditional entrance fee or an average entrance fee. Oftentimes, the units that are harder to sell or harder to occupy are those smaller residences. So let's look at that same scenario, but let's move to an entrance fee, monthly fee that's a little bit maybe more related to some of those more empty units. So we've got in this example, $150,000 entrance fee and a $2,500 monthly service fee, really kind of maybe reflecting more of a one-bedroom mix or whatnot. So even with that same scenario with those lower dollars, we end up with about $1.5 million just on those entrance fees, even for those quote unquote smaller units. And the monthly fee certainly adds up. Over the period, we've got $2.4 million. So versus the relatively large number before, we're still even here at $4 million of additional cash flow in just by occupying and moving to functionally stable concepts. So it's real dollars here.
Yep, thank you. So Dan, over to you. If your client suddenly was sitting on, $1.5 to $2.5 million of cash and knew they had an annuity of close to $500,000 a year coming in additional revenues, what would you recommend they do with that?
It's a great question, Rob, and I'm just going to point out how irresponsible it is to ask an architect how to spend your money. But I'll start by saying, a few simple things. Focus on your first impression. In this example, you can see a space that's not a terrible space, but it's underutilized and it doesn't represent energy. So put your money in a space like this to energize it, create a flexible space. If you click on the next one, Rob, you'll see that you can take a space like that, create an opportunity to show how energized your community is. In the morning, this is a place where you can grab a coffee. In the evening, you can have a drink with friends. Here's another just underwhelming space. So spend the money with a simple finish refresh on the floor, ceiling, walls to create a more dynamic hospitality feel. The next thing I would say is to, make sure that your curb appeal is there. You can see the underwhelming arrival experience transformed into more of a monumental statement of who we are and what we're about. Second, people think with their stomachs. It's just a simple fact. So making sure that you're creating a dining experience for everyone. You may have great dining, but adding a venue, branding your venue, creating a grab and go option, a pub option, allows you to appeal to more of the population. So it's a great place to spend the extra money that you have. Second, and finally, the third point I'd like to make is that you want to reinforce your brand. Who are you trying to appeal to, and who do those folks identify with? This kind of collage of images represents local artisans tying to the history of your community, and really speaking to the audience that you want to go after, and reinforcing your brand recognition in the marketplace, so that all that work that your marketing people did to get your occupancy up stays there for the long haul.
Yeah,
Great.
sorry, Rob, I was just going to
Yeah.
add in that I have to say, from a marketing perspective, that having a community that presents better and has lower fee increases means that they're in a stronger position for the long term of maintaining high census into the future. And then it's a positive cycle that builds on itself, right, Dan?
That's absolutely right, Amy. And what I would add is that deferred maintenance or something that says you're aging is just a terrible first impression. So do that favor for your marketing folks of freshening things up.
And maybe if I could say too, having additional occupancy, additional revenue, additional energy in the community, you can certainly use it to employ the additional refreshed work. But it's just so nice to have stronger occupancy that helps you maybe moderate your need to monthly service fee increases each year. The more you've got, the more you can spread those costs over with many people. We really, as an industry, value and care for our staff members. More money to the bottom line. Maybe you can provide that even higher benefit to those near and dear employees. Then you could also maybe even use that additional cash flows for benevolent care, really helping to expand the mission.
Great. So just to summarize this whole first section and lay the groundwork for where we'll go from here, getting your community to 97% to that functionally full level, it's not just a nice thing to do. It is a strategic effort designed to position your community, your organization, to be able to invest in yourself the way you should be able to invest in yourself, to stay current, to stay contemporary, and to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's residents. It's really an aspirational investment, one that can be measured, the returns can be measured in more than just dollars and cents, but in a lot of other broader ways. So, okay, thanks to our panelists for setting the stage here as to why this is such an important conversation. Now, next, let's start to dig into some of the reasons why communities might be at 93 or 91 or whatever, and what might be holding them back. James, could you lead us off? What are some of the reasons you see that communities might have census levels that stay at 93 or so instead of 97?
Yeah, it's coming from the accounting side or that financial side. It sure is understandable when communities are having success with a 93% occupancy, feels notable and important. It is certainly the job of a CFO to help set expectations, budgets, to measure performance. But what I think is often the case is organizations, when they're setting goals and budgets, they want to make sure they've got something that's achievable. 93% occupancy might sound like an easier thing to go with than 95 or 97. Why is that? Because, budgets are created often, months before we actually get into a new fiscal year. So let's set the bar when we don't even know where we are at the start of the year. Let's be acknowledging that this has not been the easiest past few years with COVID and uncertainty of anything sometimes in the economy. And by the nature of our business resident move is just not able to be determined or easily identified any year. We're just certainly nothing but uncertainty. So it makes sense that oftentimes organizations want to hit to a 93 or some kind of occupancy that makes comfort in achieving it. Not that that's easy, but makes it more achievable. Certainly want to make sure your board and investors are seeing that you're achieving budgets, which is always nice to be able to acknowledge. And again, acknowledging this is a success if you're at 93. But what we really would advocate for is your budget level is just one instrument for measuring performance. This is really a driving call to say, what can I do more? Budget doesn't mean you're done. Budget sets the expectation there.
Great, thanks. And I think that's a critical point for a lot of organizations. The budget isn't necessarily end goal. We're not suggesting that everybody out there needs to set their budget based on 97% occupancy. That's not the point here. If a budget is 93% and everything works, that's fine for the budget. But understand that there's a stretch goal, a stretch opportunity to be gained by aiming higher than that in terms of actual performance relative to budget. So thank you, James, for that.
Sure.
Amy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think thinking as a marketer, reasons that occupancies fall lower is that people, they get comfortable and feel good about their occupancy up there around 93%, and they pull back on their marketing, and that breaks my heart. A lot of communities do the same types of marketing activities year over year. And they're not really investing in what it takes to achieve those higher census levels. So I think in most cases, they really don't know what they need to invest, which is pretty much why we're here today.
Great. Thank you. Dan.
Yeah, as you can imagine, Rob, we're up against this often when we meet a new client. They make the point that, look, we have these couple of units that we just can't sell. Can you come over and have a look and tell us what's going on? More often than not, they're the smallest units that you're selling. And the fact is that whole small living craze lasted all of 5 minutes. And the truth is people just aren't ready to downsize to that level. Many people are coming from a single family home that has all the space in the world, and to ask them to move into a 900 square foot apartment is just too big a leap. So how do you make it bigger? How do you make it feel bigger is part of what we're up against. And then we get down to looking at kitchens and baths. Kitchens and baths flat out sell units. So making sure they're updated with finishes, fixtures that are appealing and trending, and something that people feel is an upgrade from where they're living now. And then beyond kitchens and baths, all the amenities that you can think of. You have to have laundry, you have to have powder rooms, dens, walk-in closets. And tell me if you heard this one before, storage. Everybody asks storage, and there just can't be enough storage. So creating it in a unit is important and can help sell. Beyond that, outside connections and natural light, that's one of the things that makes a small unit feel bigger, and certainly is healthy for the individual coming in. And finally, I would end with a point that people want to feel like they can live there for the foreseeable future. So making sure that opportunities to age in place and features that accommodate that are readily apparent upon entering a unit. All of those things are things that are lacking in the units that are just sitting there unsold.
Great, thanks. So we've really kind of talked about three things here. One is a mindset that might be holding us back. One is not knowing what investment is needed to get up to 97%, a second, and the third being some inventory challenges. And those are definitely all things that I know I've experienced many times working with communities. So let's go through and tackle each one of those in a little bit more detail. Amy, we'll start with you. You had mentioned that communities may not be investing enough in the marketing and sales to close that gap. Can you give us an idea of what type of investment might be needed and whether a community can see a positive ROI on that investment? And let me bring our slides back up here.
All right. Yeah, sure. So as Rob's pulling that up, I want to share a couple of data points to help with the conversation. I'm going to base them on the typical community that James was talking about earlier. So every community will have its own unique metrics, but this will help give a ballpark idea for everyone. So hear me out. Today, we typically see an annual closing rate of about 3.5% of new leads. This means that to get 10 more sales, we need to generate about 285 more leads. So we typically see an average cost per lead for all types of marketings combined, which includes referrals, of about $300 a lead. So to get to 285 more leads, it means it would need to invest about 85,000 more in lead generation. Okay, so that's just the lead generation. It's also possible that a community may need to add an additional sales counselor to handle the additional leads and the sales volume. Good problem to have. The annual cost of a good sales counselor, including base salary, commissions, benefits, could be about $125,000. So that's about $210,000 total so far. And perhaps, heaven forbid, you might need to hire a marketing agency to guide you on how to most effectively generate those additional leads and invest those additional dollars. There's a wide range of potential costs. So depending on how much or how little you want them to do, but for simplicity in the math, let's say you invest another $120,000, about $10K a month in professional marketing services. Let's not forget about the renovation cost. While that is typically a capital expense, not a marketing expense, we should consider it in terms of if we're calculating ROI. So let's say the average apartment renovation cost is $100,000. That adds another $1 million. So now we're looking at a total cost of about a little over $1.3 million for those that are keeping score at home. So to bring it all together, sounds like a pretty big investment, right? But for my CFOs out there, you're shaking your heads. But what's the potential return here? For our purposes, let's assume most of the available residents are smaller, so we'll be conservative. We'll use the lower set of entrance fees and monthly fees that James referred to earlier. So if a typical resident stays in IL for 8 years, as we said earlier, then these 10 additional residents are going to generate more than 2.4 million in monthly service fee revenue over their life at the community. Add in the 1.5 million the community gets in entrance fees, and this 1.3 million investment in marketing and sales generates about 4 million in revenue for the community. I'd say that's a pretty good ROI. Maybe even a mic drop moment. What do you all think?
Yeah, and I think the key thing about your illustration there, Amy, is that most times when we think about a marketing ROI, we're not looking at that renovation cost. And the return would be, because that is a capital expense, not necessarily a marketing expense. But I think you're being really conservative in showing, this 3 times return. If you look strictly at the marketing investment versus we kind of have to update the residences in any case, it's substantially greater than that.
Yeah, I didn't want to be too dazzling.
James, any thoughts to add?
Yeah, I mean, so as we think about this, it's easy to say there's dollars coming in. It's so important to put a dollar concept of how much this would cost. So it's acknowledging that this is an investment or a decision to invest in this effort. Is this really, and ultimately that's what the CFO and the organization should be thinking, is the dollars gained worth the investment put in? There are a lot of demands on everyone's time and organizations' strategic planning. So ultimately, is this the valuable time? I would think it is certainly worthy of a consideration. But ultimately, investing in your existing campus provides the longer term synergies and positive cash that I think is worthy of strong expectation, consideration of this topic.
Great, thanks. Dan, any thoughts?
Good points from both Amy and James there. And what I would say is, as much as you can position your marketing team for success, you should take those steps. The number is hard to get over, right, Amy, with that upfront cost. But I can tell you from experience that people struggle to visualize. We can do renderings, we can walk them into the space and show them a finished board. But I think that investment to preemptively renovate the unit so that somebody can walk in and say, look, I can see myself living here, is so much more impactful than all the visualization tools that we can provide. So I would definitely say, considering that upset front investment, I think the speed to market will definitely increase. So, and you already have that information. Many communities are working with great marketing teams. They've been selling units. They know what upgrades are selling. They know what finished package people are using. So use the most popular so that when people walk in, it's a very low percentage that they don't like what they see.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. So I think key takeaway from this section, too many people think of marketing as an expense. What it really is, it's an investment. It's an investment in the future of the community. It's an investment in revenue. And we've seen time and time again where we've gone in with communities, we've said, hey, if you really want to achieve that goal, this is what you're going to have to invest to get there. They make that investment, and then the ROI is really, really strong. So I think that's a key takeaway there. So James, let's go to one of the topics you brought up, which I categorized as mindset. That maybe CFOs or community leadership may have been conditioned to thinking, hey, we're at 93%. That's just great. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and possibly how they could think a little bit differently?
Yeah, sure, Rob. Thank you. It's this industry is not easy. It is not you can't just do 93% and that's all you have to do. It's notable. That's a good, strong success. But it is worthy of noting that 93%, as an example, can sometimes feel like we're comfortable, we're fine, we don't need to do more. Or is it worth the effort to go above what we think of as 93% is pretty darn good? We talked about the budgeting process and how that is an important part of an organization's expectation setting for performance. But I think that there still needs to be a base and a floor of expectation, but really drive from an organization the goal setting and excitement of being more than budget, doing more than just the budget is. Of course, you have to acknowledge that this is an industry that has uncertainty for resident movement. There is certainly investor and board monitoring of what people are doing compared to what they expect to do. But ultimately, the goal of each organization from the CEO, CFO, and the board is to set a budget and then beat it, be better, get more than just your budget as the norm. Rob, I hope that helps.
No, it's great. Thank you.
Sure. James, it made me think immediately. I'm like, this is, we're experiencing the deviation of norms sneaking in, right? Right. 93% occupied sounds pretty good. Doesn't stick out like 80 or 70%. And communities declare that a success. And as you said, to quote you, it's notable. But is leaving that $1 million on the table a success? That's pretty much screaming for attention, if you ask me.
Yeah, Rob, I wasn't going to chime in here, but I think I will. In that, when you think about where that money can go, it's not just to the architecture. The bulk of our clients are not-for-profit, mission-based organizations. So think about your mission. Think about the people that you can care for, the additional things you can do from a benevolent standpoint with that money.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Dan, let's stay with you again here for a little bit here. And we'll shift to the next major challenge we identified, which is older inventory. That if communities are out there, that they're 15, 20, 25, or years old or older, there's a high probability that the inventory they were originally designed with, and they've probably changed over the years, but it's still not really reflective of what today's prospects really want. So maybe you could share some insights with us on, just how we really should be looking at things.
Absolutely. And in this case, we'll show a couple of examples of what we talked about earlier. Small units. I mean, tell me if you've seen this unit before, where you walk in, you have kind of a built-in kitchen that's, almost 1950s style, not a lot of natural light, not a lot of viewing angles, and frankly, just feels and lives small. So in that same footprint, you can see on the right that the finishes are flowing through. The kitchen has been moved into the living area, so you have engagement between the activity areas. You have views to the outside and some of those creature comforts we talked about before, making sure laundry is introduced, making sure walk-in closets and storage are there, and of course, investing in your kitchens and baths in a smaller unit.
Yeah.
And when you view that from a 3D perspective, the finishes flow through, the ceiling flows through, the lighting is much more contemporary, the amount of natural light that comes into the unit and makes it all the way to the entry door. Because again, even at the apartment unit level, you want that natural light to be apparent. And that's how you make a smaller unit feel and live much larger. That investment of kitchens and baths, all in the same footprint, upgraded finishes, upgraded appliances, better lighting, makes a drastic improvement. And imagine the difference between arriving at one of these units versus the other. Same thing with the bathroom. And I mentioned before about feeling like you can age in place, taking away some of those barriers that a traditional tub might present to the aging population, using contemporary features. And you might not even notice that the grab bars and everything are built into this contemporary kitchen. So knowing that you may need that in the future can be the decision point for somebody walking in and viewing this unit. Here, a little bit on a larger scale, a two-bedroom unit with the same concepts on the larger units is, coming to that entry foyer, having finishes that flow through the space, abundant natural light. And I can tell you, an investment in a window might be the highest payback of anything we do architecturally, because you can just see how the natural light flows through. You might not always get the view of the ocean like you have here, but we are having a lot more clients going away from a traditionally sized 3 foot by 5 foot window and embracing glazing from wall to wall. And I just want to end on that point about aging in place. And it doesn't have to be slapping you in the face, but technology that allows you to connect to people, automation that allows you to age in place longer, and simple things like storage down low so that as you age, you don't have to be reaching up and pulling heavy items down from cabinets. And of course, that access to the outdoors. All of those things allow people to see and understand that they can see themselves living there and aging without having to transition for quite some time.
Great, thanks. I think that paints a really nice picture of what we should be aiming for and things we should be thinking about to make sure we appeal to today's and tomorrow's prospects. But let's drill down even a little more closely now and to the residence size issue, which is one that a lot of older communities struggle with. And we're going to look at this a couple of different ways. But Amy, maybe you could elaborate a little bit to start. What are we referring to if we say a community might be out of balance with smaller residences?
Well, Rob, I can share some data around that. This table shows the resident size mix and current occupancy status for one of our clients. Okay. We started working with them about 5 years ago when Census was in the low 70s. Today, they're at 98% occupied and paying, fully functional. Rob, if you'll be my Vanna here for a minute and follow along with the cursor, note that almost 25% of their residences are one-bedroom apartments, which is much higher than we would recommend for today. So the average square footage for all of their one bedrooms is also smaller than the low end of the size range. So that we would say this is appropriate for today's market. So even with that, their 2 bedrooms are 98% occupied. And what that shows us is the power that a really strong marketing, branding, and sales program can have for a community.
So, Amy, I think we got our slides mixed up just a little bit because there's another one later that I think you were speaking to. So I might just point out a couple brief things here. We'll come back and revisit that thought in a little bit. This is data from one of our clients. And you can see that in this case, they had, as Amy said, almost 25% of the residences were one bedrooms. But what you notice of the 66% census, the majority of the, not occupieds are the very smallest ones. Same thing, 2 bedrooms. We get a lot of demand for 2 bedrooms today, but yet, and they have 30% of their inventory in 2 bedrooms, yet it's sitting at only 65%. But again, you drill down and you see those 2 smallest ones at only about, plus or minus 1,100 square feet. Those are the challenges. The larger residences are moving better. So residence size is a very significant issue with communities. But let's look a little deeper into, so if you are one of those communities that does have a higher proportion of smaller residences, are you just stuck? Is that it? Or, are there things you can do to, generate more of a market for those residences? And Amy, let's stay with you on this.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot. I'll list a few. First, I need to point out, though, for some communities, these types of strategies could be a kick the can down the road strategy. If a community's inventory is out of whack with current market expectations, now it's going to continue to be a problem well into the future. So if you make a special effort to sell those, as James was noting earlier, it might be even harder later on. But putting that thought aside, things communities can do to help sell the 1 bedrooms are target marketing, right? So go toward your efforts specifically to single people. They're going to be most likely to live in a 1 bedroom. Hold small personal events where single prospects meet single residents. It's not a speed dating thing. It's helping prospects see themselves in the community. And really dig into your discovery to match prospects with residents who have similar interests. Please make sure you have a model 1 bedroom apartment that's staged well and is reflective of your open inventory, and make sure the available inventory is show ready. So to wrap up, I want to revisit the don't kick the can down the road idea, but from a different perspective. If you have empty 1 bedrooms, you don't just jump to the conclusion that the residents are unmarketable before you even try. So bring in a separate set of eyes. Dan mentioned that earlier. Look at the empty apartments differently. Find a unique selling point. Every single apartment has one of those. Let me give you an example. You could market said apartment 405, steps away from the fitness center for fitness buffs. Apartment 310 has a special reading nook for book lovers. Or apartment 101 is on the 1st floor, great for dog owners who want to step out on the patio and let their pet do their things. But you get the ideas. It's getting a little creative behind your marketing and working with what you have. So let me show an example.
And actually, Amy, I just want to add a little bit of color commentary here, because Dan earlier mentioned really make sure your residences are show ready. He maybe used a different term, that's kind of our term, and that the models show well. I can't help but share this here. The significant majority of communities that I wind up going into, the models, and I say that, I hope you can hear the quotation marks around it, are set up with what we not so fondly like to refer to as DPF. Most of you out there in our audience today probably know exactly what that stands for, but if a few of you don't, it's dead people's furniture. And it's taking what people have left behind and setting so you can see this is a bedroom. That's not what the experience we're looking to create. We want someone to walk into this model and go, wow, I can live here. So it is worth the investment to get professional assistance in staging those apartments. sorry, Amy, back to you. And I think this scenario is a little closer to what you shared earlier.
Yeah, so this is a sample client scenario that we have that shows that impact. Table shows the resident size, mix, and the occupancy, square footage, percentage of total. We started working with these guys about 5 years ago when their census was in the low 70s. But today they're at 95%. So when you're looking at this, you can see, look at their percentage of one bedrooms that are occupied and reserved now. Their two bedrooms, and then finally their overall occupancy of 98%. Even with that, you can still see that some of the smaller units are still challenged to get them sold. But in overcoming and doing some of the things that we've been talking about, they can get there.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
And just want a little more, just to set up, James, we're going to come to you with
Okay.
the next question here. But I think it is safe to assume, and we have to assume, that everybody out there with us today, if they've had an opportunity to combine residences, they've done it. You have two empty one bedrooms next to each other, you combine them. You have a studio and a one bedroom, you combine them. There's no novel idea there. But the way a lot of communities have approached this is they look for those opportunities that just happen to be there, where two residences just happen to be available at the same time, and gives them that opportunity. But what if it's a little bit more challenging to do a combination? What if you have that one bedroom that you really would like to get rid of, and it's sitting right next to a small two bedroom, for example, that's got somebody living in it? Is it worth it? And this is really the question to you, James. I'll
Right.
phrase it a little differently. How do you figure out if it's worth it to keep that one bedroom off the market until the other comes available, particularly if you have an idea that that person in the other one may not be there all that, they didn't just move in and have there full 8 years. Maybe they've been there 8 years already. And the likelihood that they may need to move somewhere else over the next year or two might be high. How would you go about figuring out if that investment is worth it?
Right. And it's counterintuitive to what we've just been saying. You want to be higher occupancy, but this is about a strategy and a thoughtfulness if there is some planning or thoughtful consideration. So what we've done is put some numbers in here to say, let's look in a scenario where you basically look to sell all units available, or you decide to hold a unit because it was strategically located next to another unit that could be a combo, strong potential. So let's just get through a few of these baseline assumptions. For our first residence here is 700 square foot apartment, 150,000 for month entrance fees, 250 for monthly fees. It's sitting next to a smaller two bedroom, one bath, 1,000 square feet, 215,000 entrance fees, 3,000 monthly service fees. When there's a potential of combining those two, so you add the two together. What's interesting is often your entrance fee can be higher for a larger unit, even if it's 1+1, because those bigger units are more marketable and worth more money. So in this example, we've shown a combination of those two units, 425,000 for entrance fees, $5,000 for monthly fees. Our scenario one, we're going to leave that one bedroom open for 2 years. We're going to strategically hold it, and then we're going to combine it with that smaller two bedroom for a cost of $200,000. This is our scenario one. Scenario two is we're going to do what you're supposed to do, which is not touch them. Let's just keep trying to sell them. In those smaller units, there is a challenge in occupying smaller units. So what we have done is assume that each of those residences are going to be turned over once over a 10-year period. They're not as easy to sell. So we're going to assume that essentially one of them is going to be vacant for most of those 10 years. So 1 and 1. Let's look at the financial results here. So in scenario one is where we have combined it. Again, we've got 2 years of no revenue for that smaller unit. but we will ultimately combine that for a cost. And Rob, we'll go ahead and let's throw all these numbers up here. We've got some hold costs. But once we get that occupied, we've got someone in there for 8 years with the entrance fee and monthly fee less the combination cost. That's about $800,000. This is over a 10-year period if we were holds and combined. And our scenario 2 is let's go ahead and let the occupancy run as it would, the small 1-bedroom and then the smaller 2-bedroom. Those are the assumptions here. Again, we're going to assume that they cannot be full the whole 10 years for each of them. So what we have shown is simply the revenue coming in plus the entrance fees of those existing units. That's a revenue cash flow of $710,000. So 800, 700. There's a small incremental gain on doing that more strategic consideration of combining. But it's $80,000. It might be a wash, but I think what we would say is at the end of that 10-year period, you now have in scenario 1 a more marketable product that you can now sell easier in the subsequent years. Whereas scenario 2, you might be the same almost dollar amount. Scenario 2, you still stuck with some small units.
All right. So Dan, as we're nearing the end here, can you walk us through some examples of some resident combinations and how people might be thinking about that?
Absolutely. We're looking at the first example. You can imagine coming into this unit, I just feel claustrophobic every time I see it. And imagining a sales group trying to sell that studio on the right-hand side is just unbearable. But with a combination with the 1-bedroom on the other side, if you click ahead, Rob, you can see we're able to accomplish a much nicer flow from the entry point, an open unit that has all the amenities that you would want, the larger amounts of storage, a wonderful kind of master suite there in the corner, and a second bedroom that has access to the patio. So yeah, I really love the point that James is making. 2 units that sit empty versus 1 that can be occupied and provide a long-term product that's sellable for you is a no-brainer. But you do have to get your team on board, right, James? I was thinking about that as you were talking. That strategy is awesome, but your sales team has to understand it because too often I'm hearing, we can sell that larger unit. Yes, but, right, we want to create a more marketable long-term solution. So that's what's represented on the screen right now. And if you click ahead, here's another one. Might be able to sell that unit, but if you click ahead, a combined unit that's a really, really nice 2-unit. You have the island kitchen. You're coming into a dining, living, great room situation. The amount of natural light coming in from those big windows, this unit just really sells itself. And you can see, the larger primary bathroom on the left has a 2-bowl sink. It has an open roll-in shower situation with walk-in closets galore, lots of storage and things that are really trending from a kitchen and bath standpoint. And I really like this example, Rob, because it's exactly what we're talking about. Those 900-ish square foot units, this is actually a triplex down in Maryland, and it was a real challenge to sell. So we explored just tearing them down, but instead came up with a combination unit. You see on the right, a 1,300 square foot unit and a 1,200 square foot unit, much more marketable. And we continued that to really brand this kind of community in a pocket neighborhood by attacking the exterior as well, color coordinating and creating opportunities for people to feel like they had something new and something special. And in the next image, I think you're not going to have a marketing team that can't sell this product. So ultimately, really proud of that. And the one point I'll just end with on that unit combination, they paid for the construction cost in one turn, one sale of these units. So they recovered all the upfront costs that Amy was talking about earlier in the very first turn.
Great, thank you. So to wrap up, before we go to our Q&A, and again, if you're out in the audience, feel free to open the Q&A dialog box in your control panel and send us a question. We've got one sitting here already. But my favorite thing to ask at the end of every webinar of our panelists is, from everything you've shared here today, what do you think is the one most important thing that you want our audience to take away? James, could you lead us off?
Sure. Okay, I'm on the spot here. Rob, right at the beginning, you said it, that McKnight's article. We are finally in the good old days where we've got the opportunity to serve even more residents, even more seniors because of the demographics. Um, After years of uncertainty around construction costs, uncertainty around health, uncertainty around economics, we're never going to be perfectly aware of everything, but this is the time before new construction is opening, before your competitors start building and building and building, or as they're thinking about it. These are the units you can set. This is what's exciting. I love my clients who are 93% occupancy. I'm going to love them even more when they're at 97.
All right, thanks. Dan, let's go to you next.
Well, I'm going to embrace the Nike slogan and say, just do it. Those units sitting there empty just are not helping you. It doesn't have to be a big investment. I know construction costs can be scary, but I would say construction costs, if you're sitting around waiting for them to go down, you're going to be waiting for a long time. It's never going to be cheaper than it is today. And the lost revenue that you have occurring is going to be recouped in no time with an occupied unit.
And Amy, last but not least.
Thank you. And great points, James and Dan. I would say that a community that's at 93% is a perfect place to close in on 97%. Don't try to do it all on your own. As I had a client share with me, everyone should assess their program, even if they're full, and especially if they're full, because success can really hide issues that you don't learn about until the unexpected occurs.
Great, thanks. And so my takeaway, pulling all the things that have been shared today together, if you have 3%, 5%, 7% or more of your inventory that's not generating revenue right now, you owe it to yourself to understand why and see what you can do about it so that you can make an educated decision on, is it worth the investment to do what's needed to fill that census gap between where you are and functionally full for your community. So, and as Amy shared, don't be bashful about bringing somebody to help. Somebody like Dan to say, look at these apartments, what can we do with them? Somebody like James to say, help you go through the math and look at the potential ROI. Or Amy or myself to look at the marketing facets of things. We're all here and happy to help you. All right, so as we go to Q&A, I'm going to bring the PowerPoint back up one last time. And first, just a quick note. At Loving Company, our mission vision statement is every day we help seniors experience a better life. And we do that by helping educate them about the opportunities that, the benefits of moving to one of our communities and that whole lifestyle. So, we achieve our mission through you, helping you achieve yours. So I hope what we shared with you today has been helpful to you. And we welcome any comments and questions that you have. As we shift into the Q&A, I've got everybody's emails up here. If there's anything you want to ask directly of anyone, please feel free to. All right, so first question, and this is someone who's already in a pretty good position. Our community has a long wait list. We are routinely at or above 97%. Congrats to you. But we think we could speed up renovation time. We give residents and their families 30 days to vacate the IL residence when they transition to AL or die. Then it takes us 90 days to renovate if there are no delays. So that's 4 months. If there are delays, then maybe 5 months. Do you have suggestions on how to speed up the renovation process while still giving incoming residents design choices? So Dan, I'm going to direct this to you first, but I want to add just one thought. For most communities we work with, our theme here today is residences that are, you're generating revenue from. Most communities that we've worked with, the monthly fee for that independent living residence carries through until the apartment is vacated. So it sounds like you're not doing that, like you're going 30 days after vacating it. So that might be one opportunity to, lower the amount of non-revenue generating time. But Dan, over to you. Suggestions on how to speed up the renovation process while still allowing for resident design choice.
Yeah, the still allowing for resident design choices is the trick, right? Because the fast answer is pre-purchasing to make sure that you have a stock and your contractor is ready with those materials to start renovating. I think if you're able to do that, at least with the base things like the cabinetry, the lighting, absolutely pre-purchasing will cut your total time in half. The other thing I would say is to try to think differently about how you deliver using resident flips. Uh, get a trade partner who does kitchens and baths, somebody with a small projects division. Big companies move slow. So somebody who's local, somebody who's nimble, somebody who's ready to be at your beck and call and deliver a resident flip is probably the best way to do it quickly and efficiently.
All right, thanks. Anybody else want to add anything to that? All right, we'll move to the next one. How have you calculated a vacancy rate into the occupancy calculation given the 90-day turn time? I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to answer two different ways to this. The first one is the whole definition of functionally full allows for a 3-month turn time for residences. That's how, with 12 out of every apartment, 12 out of every 100, typically becoming available each year. It's the equivalent of having one come available each month. It takes 3 months to renovate it. It goes live while the next one comes off. So that's how we figured that into things. Now, on the examples we shared, we were trying to, and like when James shared leaving a residence empty for 2 years, we did factor in that there was not going to be any revenue coming from that residence during that time. What we didn't do, and this is just for simplicity's sake, was when we talked about combining the residence and the 10-year time frame, we didn't leave 3 months offline to do that combination and how much monthly fees would have been lost there. We thought that was a little micro level, and we stayed at a more macro level. 3 months of monthly fees would not really add up to that much in the overall scheme of what we're trying to share. So hopefully within those 2 or 3 different answers, we got to the part that was your question, and thank you for that. Next, can you speak about the benefit and process of pre-selling apartments and allowing incoming residents to be involved in selections? Can you speak to the impact on lost revenue days? Amy, I'm going to take one shot at that first, but then I'm going to hand it off to you for another facet of it. When we work with communities, if they have a more significant number of residences available, 10, 15, 20, whatever it may be, we go through and we find the most marketable ones that they have, like one of each different product type, the most marketable 1-bedroom, the most marketable 1-bedroom with 10, the most marketable 2-bedroom. And we will go ahead and invest in turning those and making them show ready and move-in ready, replace the cabinetry, replace the carpets, everything. So you get that wow experience when somebody steps into them. And we're successful at that because we know from past history of what all our residents are taking, what the most preferred options are. And for someone to step into an apartment and see everything sparkling new, it's a totally different experience than walking in to the residence that's still looks the way it did when the last person left, and we're asking people to imagine that. So that's one part of the answer, is investing in having a portion of your inventory show ready. The rest can still be left in the state that they're in, with that opportunity to customize if someone decides to move in and doesn't doesn't want one of the ones we have available. So Amy, why don't you take the second half and talk about the pre-selling facet of things?
Yeah, sure. That's something that we've been able to do, and came about as I was working with a client and doing an expansion with another, and I was like, wait a minute, in an expansion blue sky, you're selling something that doesn't exist yet. Well, so if you take that philosophy into this with your empty apartments, available apartments, and create a floor plan, floor plans, videos, virtually stage it. We've all seen how far that's come along, and create the visuals artificially, if you will, but go all in on that and make them really marketable to look at. And you can show people, hey, this is what this could look like with when you move in. Then you haven't changed anything yet. So you still have the opportunity to say, yeah, sure, you want different color cabinets or something like that. Yeah, we can make that happen. So then you turn that into a positive. And that is how you can really lower the impact on the lost revenue days.
Great, thank you. And I know we've run a little bit past our 1 o'clock target, but thank you for those who are still hanging on. We do welcome more questions. We have one more right now. Everything you've discussed applies to one of our communities, but we're not yet at the 93% occupancy level. Is there anything you would adjust in your key points for a community at 83% versus 93%? And I have a feeling all of our panelists, want to chip in on this one. So I'm like biting my tongue to not start, but I will just say everything we've talked about on steroids, to really drive it. But beyond that, semi-humorous but also serious response. I'll open it up. Amy, Dan, James, any of you want to share your thoughts on that one?
I'll lead off, Rob, if you don't mind. I think it actually presents a little more opportunity. We talked about those challenges about whether or not the right two units are side by side. The likelihood that you have vacant units that can be combined and renovated all at the same time, giving you economy of scale, speed to market, all of those things is higher if your census is lower. So while it kind of stinks that your census is lower, it presents an opportunity, at least from a design and construction standpoint, to get in there, get it done efficiently, and have a product that you're ready to sell.
And from a financial side, I think it just adds to the level of importance to consider strongly how you can go from 83 to 93 to 97. The impact that it will have on your financial performance will be meaningful, but you cannot do that by a hope and a prayer. You're going to have to put some dollars to it, helping you and your organization, your stakeholders, understand the financial impact of putting money in and what does that get at the end and to get better.
Yeah, if I can add in, Rob, I think Dan said it earlier. It's kind of what we said today is applicable at any point. And then as Rob ended on, let's put it on steroids. I think another big point is to really look at your planning. You're at 83% right now. What's it going to take to get to 87? Let's make that happen first. Then let's go to the next increment. And if you do that in phases, it feels a little bit more manageable. And you can also be doing some of the things that Dan and James just talked about while you're in the process of doing that. So really go through your inventory, look at it carefully, see which ones are your best apartments that you might be able to sell sooner or later, sooner rather than later, and get those sold, and get yourself to 87. Then we'll get you to 93.
Great. Thank you all. And those are all the questions that have been submitted. And I know a lot of people have left the webinar already. For those who stayed throughout, thank you very much. We hope this has been helpful for you. And to Amy and Dan and James, especially Dan and James, for volunteering their time and thoughts to bring these ideas and share with you. Thank you so much. I think it means a lot to our audience that, you know, all of you are willing to put your time in here to help the field in general.
Thank you to Love and Company for facilitating.
Yes,
Oh.
grateful for the chance to do this together.
You're very welcome. So, all right, everyone, take care. And don't know where your afternoons are headed, but this happens to be opening day for the Orioles. I've thought about wearing my Orioles jersey today, but didn't think it would work so well for the recording on the website. So, everyone, take care, and we'll see you next time.